So this is the completed core, extra padding, wrapped with MC foam for the entire length. I save my scrap foam left over because I have adapted a Dovan Tech to build up pommels that is much more durable than my old tech. You can see it featured on the Park Relic Dagger, as well as some of my newer construction like the Hammer Dagger. Very painful usefulness. And the next step will be, of course, to take the roll of camp foam and make the blade. For a 40-inch blade, 2/3 of the length that's required by longsword is 26 1/3 inches. In order to ensure legality along all regards, especially as I like to taper the very last bit, I'm going to go for a 28-inch blade. In the past, I have done a straight sandwich, and more recently I did a sandwich with a wrap around it. I found actually that whenever I do the wrap around the length of it, it actually causes additional stress for the sandwiched boards and presses them apart quicker. So this one that I'm building will be a flat sandwich as well. This is a rebuilt and repurposed core that I never got around to repommeling. This was out of my original twin blades. This one has not seen use. While legal, I am probably going to completely rebuild this one. The foam was in very good repair, and I just repaired the last very end of it by adding a layer around it and building up the pommel in a rougher manner than seen here. But I know I can do better with straighter lines, and I'm going to repurpose this at my next workshop. So I'm going to lay out the foam. Another use for packing tape, strapping tape, various things. I'll weight it down. 3M, thank you very much. I tend to work very quickly because I just want to get it done. So, I'm going to measure at 28 inches. And what I like to do, one length of camp pad will very easily make 2 blades with a 3-layer thing. So I'm just marking 28 inches on one end. Then I slide over to the other, find my 28-inch marker. Once again, this is an additional 1 1/3 inch more strike legal padding that is required. Marking that off. Lining up my cuts. One of the important things about working foam noodle, blue camp foam especially, is you don't try to cut all the way through on your first cut, even if you have a brand new razor blade. You do several shallow cuts, making sure you follow your score. Cut cleaner, cut smoother, no ragged hair edges. That is a pretty straight edge. For the blades, I use a 3-inch wide piece of blue camp foam with a 524 kite spar. I could go as narrow as roughly 2.5 inches, of course. I would go no less than 2.75 just to always make sure I have enough padding. And I find that 3 inches does not add a huge amount of extra weight, and giving 1 1/4 inch of padding on either side just makes me feel more comfortable in general. I make my daggers 4 inches wide because of the weight. It doesn't really make a problem for the size, and the extra blocking size of the dagger doesn't hurt. always just cut slowly, shallow cuts along the length. This is actually my third piece. I cut the first two off camera. So it's pretty basic. And there we have our 1, 2, 3 layers for a 28-inch blade, which of course is for a 40-inch near minimum length longsword. Also happens to be about the standard length and size for a katana. Now, as a channel method, I'm going to cut a 1/2 inch channel down the middle of just one of these. If I wanted to, I could offset it to where I only have 1/2 inch of padding on one side, and then I could shape the blade keeping track of the distance and make a katana for a curved sword that has just one edge. It's a future project of mine just for the flurb, but this will be a general purpose double-sided Celtic, gladius, whatever, longsword, medieval longsword, just for general double quickness and all. So the next step, of course, is I'm going to be measuring out. I use, rule books say 1 inch. I use 1.5 inches of padding for extra security. It's not the 2 inches. I tried 2 inches. The thing bent too much. 1.5 inches works pretty well. It's not enough to make it warp, especially since I will be reinforcing with either strapping tape or duct tape. I like duct tape, but this is the first time I'm working with strapping tape, and I might give that a go as well. So what I will do is first, in multiple parts, I'm going to measure off 1.5 inches. That's about halfway. I'm going to make such a shallow cut it won't really matter. But I'm making my little mark for 1.5 inches right there. And there again. That's just to let me know not to go any further than that, so I make sure I have strike legal surfaces. Now the next step is I will be measuring 1.5 inches on either side, because with a 1.5 inch with a 3-inch blade, 1.5 inches is of course halfway through. So I'm measuring right there, my center point. That was actually pretty close. I can go ahead and make a pretty decent cut in there as my marker. I can use ink pens. I'm just have got more accustomed to using the knife to make marks. It just works better for me. Ink pens would probably be the best for most people. And once again, I'm cutting right in the middle. And I have a couple marks just for thoroughness. I'm going to make one more near the end. At 1.5 inches. Of course, this isn't actually for a cut. This is me checking to make sure this looks like a straight line up all the way across. There's my mark. Same amount of overlap on all sides. That is centered. Next step is I will take a 1/4 inch to get a total of 1/2. There's mine. I'm going to take a 1/4 inch, 2/8 on either side. I mark. That's 1/8, that's 2/8 right there. That's our first. And our next. Centered. Right. Aha. That's going to be the center mark where the channel is. Go to my next mark. Find a 1/4 inch on one side. Stab through. And a 1/4 inch on the other side. Stab through. Make sure it's nice and marked up. I find my last mark. And yes, I have used ink pens to do this. It works just as well. I've made about a dozen of these now, and I prefer not to have to switch tools halfway through. Being able to work with one tool the whole way through means the knife never really has to leave my hand. From the end, straight line. Once again, light, shallow cuts. Far prefer to have to go over this 5 times than to have a ragged cut. Feels like maybe one more pass should do this trick. There it is, I feel the table. Now I line up this mark, and this mark. Probably have to fix something at the very end of it. Not too wide, it's just going to pop out a bit. So actually making it more padded at the end. Fix that in production. Very straight line here. At the very end, it fanned out to be a bit extra. So, and this is probably the longest video segment too. This is the most detailed part. Straighten the line. Make sure it's straight, flush. A little bit extra to trim off. I have a nice thing. What's nice is I could cut a little bit wider and then it would be not as snug. This is actually going to make for a very snug, slightly more than 3-inch wide. That's definitely a little bit bigger there for the tip, but it compresses in nicely, and the final trim will make that look very nice. Next step is I'm going to use strapping tape to alternately strap one here, 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 here. About 8 small narrow strips of strapping tape down the length, going overlap this way, alternating laps. We've all done that, and it'll be easy enough to demonstrate. I will do it all off camera and then post the completed thing in a video before I start the 3M aspect.